Yeah, hello and evening. It's Tuesday night,
It is.
6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the Jack.
And it's Real Talk with Cummings.
That's right. My name's Morgangelo.
And it's my name.
Good. Here we go.
Oh, that's right. Must be the estrogen.
Must be. Although you've been decreasing the dose, as have I, because, I mean, all this research that we've been
Oh
doing.
my gosh,
now,
just mind-blowing
Mind-blowing.
what's going on. I honestly had no idea that the FDA has never even approved the use of hormones, that we're using it in
It's
an
off-label.
off-label use.
Off-label use. And there
Wow.
are so many studies on the harmful effects of synthetic hormones.
Even bioidentical, whatever that means.
Which is
Not
really not really
truly that.
bioidentical. They'll sell ice to Eskimos as long as they can sell something. And that is something that our community needs to be very careful, because these medical professionals, these gender specialists, do not have your best intent.
Yeah.
Interest in helping anyone. And this is what actually guides us and drives us to like want to know answers. And we study and research and just try to find out, why are we the way we are?
Exactly.
You know, not just being told, hey, you're born in the wrong body. No one's ever born in the wrong body. No one. I mean, this is not a pathology. The pathology is the way we handle this. You know, because I think gender variant people have been around since the beginning of time. It's something very normal. You know, nature has a way of throwing curveballs here and there. And we're just a curveball. And people just want justification on who they are. And probably many of you who are watching tonight are here because we know that the show for tonight is called False Self.
Yikes.
We're going to delve into some real psychobabble stuff, some really deep stuff, trying to find out. And then it's not just for transgender people. You know, this is, a lot of people create this false self. People that let their ego run wild. You know, and whether they're a huge bodybuilder and think that they need to get bigger and bigger to be able
to promote an image of themselves that probably wasn't in existence before, but maybe they felt ridiculed as, a younger kid or something like that, bullied on the playground, and they probably thought, you just wait. When I get bigger, I'm gonna show you.
And maybe they didn't even go with that intention. It just automatically happened because the ego has a way of sneaking up on us and creating all these false reality and these personas within us. I mean, some people have multiple of these, like multiple personality disorder, like Sybil. I'm sure many of you have seen that movie. And, it's the human mind is so interesting.
It's a creative force. It's powerful. I mean, I even heard that how we even, and it's controversial, probably people are going to go, whatever, but the concept that we're a thought before we are actually a created person, physically in this body and living on this planet, that we're really a thought, and that the thought is what creates the physical reality that we have around us, because we are really, like what you said before, spiritual beings, humans.
Anyway, it's there are so many questions in our own mind, and as we get these questions, we end up, trying to find answers, because I'm not going to take some quack years ago created, this whole gender dysphoria, born in the wrong body. I can't take it sitting down. And as you progress in the years of transition, it's this inner voice just starts nagging at you. And when we see people that have transitioned and have been in that transition for X amount of years, they start questioning themselves, and then they're not happy. They go, well, we should be happy, but we're really not happy.
Or after they do transition, and some take even the extreme steps towards, getting sexual reassignment surgeries and things of that nature, at that point, they really don't want to say anything, because it would ruin their own, emotional stability to accept the fact that maybe it wasn't all that they thought it was cut out to be for them.
Because again, it starts pretty much as a fantasy. And next week, we're going to even delve even deeper into what many of you hate the term AGP. There's the words cross dreamer and
Femophilia,
which we'll talk about a little bit, just to delve on it later in the show. But there's just so much to this. It's not as black and white as you think. it should be. It's not. You go to the gender specialist, you tell them how you knew when you were 3, and other typical stuff that we all learned what to say when we went to that therapist's office. We would not dare tell them all the childhood traumas and baggage that we're dealing with.
Because that might somehow disqualify us from being labeled as gender dysphoric or gender identity disorder, depending on when you transition.
Exactly. Anyway, if you want to call in at any time and interrupt us and ask us a question and give us a comment or text it, or actually you can visit the website at the chat and watch area. The number to call would be area code 575-519-5930, and the number's up there on the thingy there, whatever. So, you know, it's going to be packed with information today, the show and stuff that I think will get us all able to think.
Or if you want to comment on YouTube itself, while the stream is going on live, you can also do that. I had a few people interacting last week on YouTube, and you can add a comment, and, you know, I'm monitoring it and looking at it to see, you know, if people are going to say anything, and, you know, we'll respond.
Yeah. But have you wondered what makes you you? You know, are you predisposed with all of your personalities, perfections and imperfections? Are you a byproduct of your genetics or environmental circumstances?
Psychology has attempted to explain many of human downfalls and behavioral outcomes, trying to map out our conditions based on lots of subjective information, as in the latest gender dysphoria, but really have no clue what is going on at times.
We can safely say that human behavior can be a bit bizarre at times, you know, which can leave us reaching for straws at any given time.
What we do know is that there are periods in our lifetime that create moments and patterns that may leave us blocked to further growth and development, which can lead us to believe and create a false self.
I know many of you remember when you were kids, you know, and we created an imaginary friend, you know, because mommy didn't listen to us. Nobody, we really didn't get the attention. We ignored, you know, so we just create this little imaginary friend that helps us along through life. And kind of like that imaginary friend, there are times in our lives where we get stuck in a paradigm. We've been traumatized. We've been told, like I know I got told many times, girls don't act that way. And I'm sure you were discouraged also to be your sensitive, you know, any kind of femininity was always like, no.
Yeah, like, you know, for example, I was reading a story about a person who basically when they were like 5 years old, they decided to play, you know, dress up or something, and they found their mother's lipstick, and then they gobbed it on their face and went downstairs. Well, dad didn't really approve, and it left a pretty massive mark of trauma on that little boy. So when that little boy turns to be like 11 years of age or something, these questions of gender really start hitting them really hard, and they start to dress in their mother's clothing while their mom and dad are gone.
And do you know why? Because it's like that forbidden moment when you are just experimenting. Because as kids, we experiment.
Connections.
Yeah, you're making connections in the brain, your neural synapses, and you're told, no, that's bad. Well, there's like this thing where somebody tells you, don't open that box because something bad's going to happen. Well, what do you want to do? You want to open that freaking box or not? What's in there? The curiosity. So somehow that taboo just creates a series of events, domino effect, as we start aging, and we want to get into, what's the word, indulge in these things that we were told that we're not allowed to do. Besides that, there are a lot of different reasons why we create a false self, and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about different solutions and how, you know, and at any time, again, if you guys want to contribute with any thoughts, any questions, please feel free to share your experience or anything of that nature. Well, the false self is an artificial persona that people create very early in life to protect themselves from re-experiencing developmental trauma, shock, and stress in close relationships. This false self or public self appears polite and well-mannered and puts on a show of being real. Internally, they feel empty, dead, or phony, unable to be spontaneous and alive and to show their true self in any part of their lives.
Children create a false self because they do not have enough emotional and social support to become emotionally and psychologically separate from their parents. This adapted self can be either deflated and codependent or inflated and counter-dependent.
Now, the codependent deflated false self is designed to please parents and maintaining their conditional love. The counter-dependent inflated is designed to protect children from feeling their unmet dependency needs by maintaining distance between themselves and their parents. Unfortunately, the true self, which operates from a sense of integrity, personal authenticity, and connection to wholeness, gets sacrificed in both adaptive process.
Toddlers may develop a whole array of upper defenses that not only help maintain this separateness, but also support the inflated false self. These upper addictions also help children feel safe by avoiding events and emotions that might trigger traumatic memories related to premature separation.
And the key word here is addiction. And that's something that, a lot of people don't realize. Certain feelings, certain creation becomes addicted. It's like a release of dopamine when we entail this persona. As a defense system against the need for emotional intimacy solidifies over a person's lifetime, they can turn into a full-blown narcissistic personality. A massive number of narcissistically dependent adults, particularly in the US, has become a global problem.
Because so many people did not experience healthy narcissism and go through the developmental process of ego reduction, they still act like entitled, grandiose, euphoric, and omnipotent 2- and 3-year-olds. Adult temper tantrums. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just.
Do you remember? Okay, wait, I gotta stop. The other day we were watching on the Olympics. During the wrestling competition, Team Mongolia did not win the bronze medal for one of their wrestlers. And the coaches threw a conniption fit. It was like watching a 2- or 3-year-old on the floor. They started taking their clothes off in like defiance against
protesting. What does a 3-year-old do? Start
I couldn't believe that.
And to add to that, what do people do when they are not validated? And specifically in this community, they throw temper tantrums.
Adult temper tantrums get played out through child abuse, domestic violence, religious and ethnic wars, and a full range of other protective and revenge-seeking behaviors.
Revenge-seeking behaviors. I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah.
So, addiction and false self. Many people probably wonder, why do they become addicted to a substance, to an emotion, to a creation? Okay. Furthermore, the addictions associated with separation trauma, upper drugs, work, quick sex, traveling, and over-consuming serve as an inadequate and unsatisfying substitute for the deep emotional connection and experience of union with the divine that people miss with their mother. Okay.
Unfortunately, it often takes people a long time to discover that unresolved developmental trauma is the cause of many of their problems.
A lot of times what we're seeing is children, children are pulled away from their mother from the moment that the mother gives birth, that umbilical cord is cut, right? Which back in the older days, the child remained with the mother, umbilical cord still connected. It wasn't a hospital type environment. It wasn't cold. It wasn't, it was natural in the woods or in the house. And, that umbilical cord wasn't like one of those things that you have to quickly cut it so that you could take the child, measure it, poke it and hoke it and vaccinate it and do all the stuff that's done. Well, that initial separation is very traumatic. And most people don't even realize that.
I mean, I remember seeing it, when I saw my kids coming out and stuff like that, and just how cold of an environment it was. I mean, it was already cold in the hospital room, right? And then it's like these strangers, the baby didn't even start to make its first noises.
Yeah.
And, they're like automatically like asking you to cut the umbilical, and I'm like, no.
Just sticking stuff off their nose to
Yeah,
get the
and then
boogers
the
out.
baby is like immediately placed on a very cold metal, you know, like a tray or something, you know, and then you got people poking and prodding and sticking things in their ears, and it's like they're barely out of this warm, you know, and familiar environment.
They don't even know what hit them.
No.
You know, and people don't realize that during the time that you're coming out of your mother's womb, from that beginning onward, there are synapses and connections that are being made in your mind that create the persona that you are throughout life. Then you've got school time, where it's now time, you know, kindergarten or preschool, whatever, you're used to being with your mom, the person you trust and love. And sometimes that doesn't even get to happen, because sometimes mommy has to go back to work after the child's 3 months old and they get given to strangers.
Yeah, I
So,
remember I was traumatized when I was in preschool. I had to be dropped off at like 7 in the morning, and here I'm barely 5 years old. And I remember crying the first day of school, you know, first day of preschool, going, what happened?
Yeah. Why am I being taken to
Why
this?
am I being dumped?
Yeah.
Basically, you feel kind of abandoned.
Abandoned. So there's a lot of abandonment issue, and a lot of like being pulled away from the person that you trust and love, and it's your mother, and it's that feminine person, this goddess that you feel in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we wonder a lot why male body individuals create this feminine nature, which we're going to get into a little later. But the physical and psychological armoring characteristics of narcissism and other avoidant defense mechanism can eventually become a prison. Initially created as a protective mechanism, they can become so wired into the brain and personality structured that they require a dramatic, life-altering event to break through them. What do you think the life-altering event is for transgender individuals? Which is, you know, why I'm bringing up all these points on the show. This is core pain to the most that creates the so.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like I was saying before, with the kid with the lipstick playing around, you know, dress up and stuff like that. I mean, if a parent automatically reinforces just how boys don't do that, girls are the only ones, and it's like, what?
What am I doing? You know,
I mean, I'm just like making these connections. So now I'm like, lipstick bad for boys, lipstick good for girls, but
I
why?
like lipstick.
But why? But why?
Yeah.
So you're left with that but why in your head. Exactly. These cosmic 2x4 events, that's pretty much right, not only shatter the defense system, they often trigger the very early and very disassociated memories that initially caused the individual to build an inflated, counter-dependent false self. These wake-up calls shatter the false self and drop the person into the black hole, a place where people feel shattered, alone, and in despair. What do you see most of?
The trans community.
Oh my gosh, you see that all the time.
You know, the sad thing is that the solutions being given to individuals like us is false solution, false hope, false advertisement.
It's like going to McDonald's for, you know, a quick meal and stuff, and it's like, you know, everybody knows that, you know, although they advertise it as like real chicken and, you know, hormone free and all this other thing about McDonald's, it's bad for you.
Very bad.
So, you know, although these advertisements for gender therapists and stuff say transition is good,
one size fits all,
synthetic hormones, gender dysphoria is the solution by doing surgery or doing, you know, other, you know, things hormonally are the solution. Well, that's like the quick fix, right. But the fix is not really a fix.
And it's very intriguing and very fun derived. Like somebody yesterday on Facebook, a man who has been contemplating transitioning, and they're depressed, lonely, life not so exciting, to their own admittance.
A bored male.
Yeah, a bored male. And it's like when I see all these people online and they're having so much fun.
Yeah, all these people like Gigi and others that, are like playing it up and having a great time with their makeup and their life. You know, they're all these little starlets and stuff. And it's like, you know, that's not what's happening in the broad spectrum of the transgender community. There are lots of people who will never look anything like.
And even if they
these young
did,
kids.
I mean, I've known successful looking, as close as you can get, trans women, they're still not happy. And they're still, like, once they reach one end of the pendulum, they're here, they're looking around and go, I'm supposed to be happy, but I'm not. So it's like, and it's like a tennis match.
Yeah.
And they battle with themselves. So, you know, this one size fit all doesn't work. And doing it because it's fun, I mean, that got my blood, you know, my feminist side, my female was like, fun. Being a female is fun. I beg to differ. You know, the man created woman scenario of the heels and the bras and the glamour, that was male directed, because males wanted to fantasize what their women look like. But if you go back in history in the 1800s, what women wore were not fun.
And what they did for a living was not fun.
So I challenge all trans women, if you had to go back to the 1800s,
would you still think about it?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't want to transition at all. Be like, oh, hell no, I'm a dude, you know? So, yeah, and I asked you the question.
We were watching this thing, and it was like, okay.
And I kept looking at it, like, would you have wanted to transition if you had to live through it? Like, hell no. Yeah, I thought so. Anyway, without knowing it, all of us have a particular secret negative belief about ourselves that feels so devastating. It can take us down an unbearable dark hole of emotional pain. And we each have a particular and opposite set of compensation behaviors. Some of us wear wigs and makeup, which from the architecture of the false idolized mask that we show to the world.
Our core pain is most often invisible to us because it formed when we were babies. Our degree of separation away from unconditional love is our normal emotional pain set point. Our preferred presenting personality hides and denies the core pain of separation and relegates it to the unconscious part of our mind, sometimes never to be discovered or understood during our lifespan.
And that, you know, when we were reading some of the stuff on that website of what is called AGP now, the new name again is cross-dreamer, or something like that. It's like a sense of like, well, I'm not good enough. As a man, I suck. You know, I don't at all fit into any of these male roles because I'm not alpha, rough and tough enough. So, you know, we start thinking and looking at what females are, and we think, that sounds like fun. I could just be passive and stay at home, and, you know, just all these scenarios and men think women are about. So that sounds a lot more appealing. Mm-hmm. And so the self that we are, go, nah, that's not good. Let me create this false self. And it starts as a dream. It starts as a fantasy. And this fantasy becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And before you know it.
I read a trans woman's page, like one of their memes was, I just want to be able to be wearing my husband's shirt and cooking dinner for him and in a house with 2 big dogs.
That's pretty much the reality. When, you know, my last relationship, when I took them out of the scene that they were working and they just stayed at home while I worked, I fulfilled that fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
It's, yeah. Anyway, was it my turn? Or?
Yeah.
Our normal emotional set points is so deeply integrated into our biology. Rarely do we question or investigate the possibility of feeling differently. Our hidden negative emotional set point seems to be our nature. It is the familiar water that we swim in. And our secret core pain drives nearly everything we do in life. Everything. From our most troublesome addictions and darkest depressions to our greater achievements and success.
Core pain. We each have our own recipe for experiencing separation away from love. In fear, we contract our body, mind, and emotions down in systematic, repetitive, and specific ways. This particular way of contracting away from love is the root of all of our emotional and psychological pain. Our connection to our family lineage provides strong clues to the negative core belief we may be struggling with. We often inherit wounds our parents could not heal.
And that's very interesting because, the job of a parent is to help a child grow not only physically and well-being, but emotionally. And we talked about this before, that there should be a manual that shows a parent, study this before you have a baby.
Yeah, there should be like some kind of a class that high schoolers take before they get out of high school.
How to be a good parent, child abnormal and normal psychology.
Yeah.
Is your kid developing? Are you hindering their emotional development? Right. Are you helping it? Because we don't think of these things. These little beings, you could end up ruining them for life, literally.
I mean, I remember that we did this thing about family planning in my Christian school that I went to, and here was the test. It was an egg, and you kept it in like some kind of a compartment, and you were paired up with another person and stuff, and then you would kind of take turns, and then you'd have to have a babysitter for the egg and make sure that the egg didn't fall. And it's like, it wasn't just about the emotional needs of somebody, it was just the physical realities of being careful with the fragility of the egg. I think that there was more to be gained in trying to talk about these things instead of just physically making it about.
Because that's all we think. We think if we provide food, shelter, and a strong hand, that's all a child needs. Well, we're a thinking being. We have emotions. We have psychological components that could be totally devastating for life. People that have to go to therapy for the rest of their life. Never mind the trans issue. I mean, just other issues in general.
Right.
So if you take, the I am perfect, scenario, the negative core belief is there seems to be something wrong with me. And that's because we're told that. We're told from the time we're little, because our parents are trying to duplicate society's wants and need and norms. And so they don't want to be ridiculed as parents. So they try and instill the same thing that was instilled in them.
They don't know any better because it's like, that's all they know.
Yeah, no manual ever given. If your kid's very feminine, you're born a boy, it's okay. That's who he is. If your daughter is masculine, that's okay too. That's how. Don't tell her she's walking wrong or looks wrong in a dress or make fun of them, because that creates problems.
I remember in my last relationship where, there was an issue with one of the kids and stuff like that, and our son was caught wearing my daughter's panties, right? And he was promptly scolded. The mother was like, she's like, you can't be doing this. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. And if I ever catch you doing it again, and the kid's like, okay.
You traumatized the heck out of that kid.
And it's like, instead, and I remember a prayer that was prayed was, God, please, if there's anything that I would ever want from you, is that my boys would be boys and that my girls would be girls. And it's like, there's no room for gender variance in that. There's no room for allowing a human being to be expressive of who they are and who they have been made and created to be. Some of us are simply gender variant. That's it. There's no jumping from male to female. It's just we're in the middle.
Yeah, and
we're a little bit of both.
But the system, and we read something about a gender specialist telling somebody, no, you have to pick a box. You're either a male or a female.
Yeah, a gender therapist is like, there is no in between.
And that's
either you're male or female. That's it.
There's no personality in life that's cut to be black or white. There's a lot of shades of gray. And religion is partly to blame. Society is very much to blame because they want to put everybody in a neat little box and tell them what they are. And this, folks, is what creates this whole gender dysphoria. There's nothing wrong with your gender. Your dysphoria is that because you're different, and you quickly learn that you're different from the time you're little and you're playing with other little girls and you see the other little girls being all pretty, and you're like, hey, you're all butchier than the rest of the girls, and everybody's kind of like, ew, what's wrong with you?
What was it when you were like in ballet class and you
oh my God, I couldn't do this.
Couldn't
I
do
mean,
the
I had no grace.
stretches and
Yeah, no
things like
grace.
that?
I had no flexibility. I looked like a monkey out of, out of place in this
Yeah.
whole circus thing.
Right.
And, so then when you hear somebody tell you, hey, you're transgender, you're an FTM, you should have been a male. And then
Oh.
it's like, oh, that,
Oh my
no
God.
shit, Sherlock, no wonder
I'm
I've
so
been,
masculine.
yeah, I'm meant to be, I'm a man,
I'm
that's
a
right,
man. You
because,
grow a beard here.
yeah, exactly. And that's the problem. Society has created the condition we call gender dysphoria or gender identity disorders, which it started out being, and voila, transgender people are born.
But make no mistake, nobody came up with that name other than the medical community. Medical professionals who seek to capitalize on this condition are, which is a condition of people who struggle in life, to fit in, and they finally get something to latch onto.
And that's the condition, that we don't fit in. So we're giving a solution, and the solution is not really a solution at all, because then you go from one prison into another prison. And you have people that will lie, steal, and cheat to get to that point that they want to get, no matter what. And at the end, they find out it's closed, but no cigar. And that's where you're unhappy, because you did everything you needed to do, and you're still not happy. And you still look in the mirror, and it still doesn't look right. So that wasn't the answer. The answer was just be you, be happy, and be free. We don't have to change our body. Society is the one that has to change the way they view us. And please don't tell me you're a special snowflake. Your case is different, because we hear that all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
you don't understand.
Right.
I identified as a male when I was like 18, and I've been dressing and living as one since. And
Yeah,
then,
everybody's a special snowflake in this whole arena, and no, there isn't. You're male, you're female, you're intersex, you're gender variant, but you just can't say, well, I was born in the wrong body. I'm gonna fix that like you're fixing a car. We're not vehicles. We're not machineries. We are human beings. And in the quest of doing what you're doing, you think you're fixing something, but on the contrary, you're actually complicating things even more.
Yeah, I mean, physically, what you're doing is, like in the case of an MTF who's in search of the all-important holy grail of SRS, which only, I think, 18% of people in the world that are identifying as trans even go there.
Right.
And basically 300 to 500 people in the United States have that type of surgery every year, compared to a population of 330 million people. We're talking about a minuscule amount of people that go there. But when you do go there, here's what happens. Your endocrine system gets messed up, and you basically kind of lose your sex drive. And now you basically you've been castrated as a male. The kings in the past and emperors, they castrated people, men, because they wanted them to be what?
Docile.
Yeah.
Compliant. And a lot of people say, well, I don't like sex anyway. Well,
I'm asexual.
There is a reason, besides having babies, that we have this whole orgasmic ability. It's like a fire that it's lit inside you. When you lose that fire, you lose your drive. You lose your ability to be the person that you are. And in the long run, and we've been hearing testimonies, and we've been time and time again, they get to where they thought they needed to be, and they're still not happy. And now they're sick, they're frail. To me, they become like zombies. I mean, you see, there's no life in their eyes anymore.
I mean, I would recommend anyone who's considering transitioning to look at the lives of older trans people. Don't go to Gigi's page. Don't go to All Sparkle's page and all these other pages of happy, joyful, youthful, like in their 20s people. Go to 60s and 70s. See where they're at. Yeah. See where, is that where you want to be?
And even the sparkles, I mean, they're still not happy. And they've said it before. It's like they still have dysphoria. They've had everything done, and they still walk around. And eventually what happens is that other voice, that other side of you, because there's a yin and a yang, starts screaming and starts telling you, hello, I'm here. Do you forget about me? and then it's a battle. The battle then becomes, it's like you were here battling, you're here now, you're battling again, and it's like
it's like, okay, it's like a cell that you're in, and you thought you escaped, but you're back in the same thing. And it's like you go from one side, bam, the wall hits you. Other side, bam, the wall hits you. Because, okay, you're transitioning. You're all happy. You do everything. You get FFS, you get SRS, you do all of it, right? But you still can't relate to regular women because you can't really tell them that you are not exactly like them, that you have maybe a different past. What do you do when they say, oh, and when I was in high school, I did, and it's like, well, when I was in high school, I ran track.
Yeah.
I was in the football team. I was like,
or you find
there's
yourself
no
lying.
connection there.
And
Or you find yourself telling stories.
And lies, and one lie leads to another lie, and then before you know it, your conscience is telling you, you are a liar. You know, and it just gets really complicated, and once you get there and you know, I mean, I've been in this for a while, you know what I'm talking about, but you can't really know what I'm talking about till you get there. So anyway, going back to this, something went wrong, you know, something's wrong with me, right? That's what, you know, you're perfect, so I know something's wrong with me. So the compensating personality says, I must be perfect. I must prove there is not something wrong with me, seeking internal and or external perfection. This personality appears as a distant, but is actually inwardly clinging and controlling, wanting to perfect self or others. If I do it perfectly, I will be healed. And what's that motto of a lot of trans people?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get all these things done. I want to make sure that, you know, I do this right. I got my list. I got my things that I want to do. I want to get my breasts done. I want to get my, you know, I mean, all this different
and it's
stuff,
perfection. As you sit there hours in the mirror, frustrating, because you're frustrated with yourself because, damn it, can't get these eyebrows right. If I can't get this thing right, or
you know, big enough.
I paid all this money for electrolytes, and these freaking hairs keep coming out. It's like you're fighting against a losing battle because your body doesn't know what your mind or your fantasies are. Your body knows that it's male, and it's doing what a male body does, and you're fighting against it. Do you think that helps your adrenal system? Do you think that helps your psyche any? This constant battle gets to the point after years and years and years and years, and you're like exhausted. You know, the dopamine release stops happening. What do you have now? The estrogen that you're taking no longer is working for you as well as because it's just like your own testosterone is fighting against it. Your body's trying everything within its core to get you back to your original state.
And then you're like, okay, I need more estrogen then. So I need to get my doctor to prescribe me with a higher dosage so that I can feminize more. And what really is happening is that the dopamine that used to satisfy what that sense was of being feminine and being a woman or whatever, now it doesn't do it. So now you need to do more, and you need to be more, and you need to venture off and do things that you never thought that you were going to do. Like, oh, I want to be a model all of a sudden. I want to move to Los Angeles and become this great superstar. And it's like you get all these things in your head, and you start wanting to become something that you're not.
Right, because it still doesn't feel right. So you're, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to move. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to adopt a kid. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to do this, that, and the other. Before it's like, and at the end, you're like, damn, I've done it. What else is there? Why am I still void? Why am I still unhappy? And now I've got all these other mental issues. I cry out of a heartbeat. I don't feel right. I'm psychotic. I'm, you know, and it's just like a vicious cycle. And people don't want to believe that. People want to believe in the beginning, this is all candy cane and sugar snaps and all these wonderful things, but it's not as wonderful as it's being advertised, and it's being falsely advertised, and people are being led to a dead end.
The fact is that once you begin hormone treatment, you're on a perilous road, because basically what you've done now is you have psychologically rearranged your brain and your body to feel different, to act different, to respond differently. And even as an MTF, if you ever stopped hormones, it's still something that has completely reconfigured your brain. So now you're dealing with all these other issues. And what happens if you continue in your transition? And, you know, I know a lot of people don't like the term autogynephilia and stuff, and they have very very resentful, thoughts about it, but things that made you sexually maybe appeal to being a woman and stuff like that, which although so many people don't want to acknowledge that as a reality in the transgender community, well, it is a reality, and just, just get over it. A lot of people go to crossstreamers.com website, you'll see what I'm talking about. Basically, this lowering of the T actually causes that sensation of wanting to be more feminine to like abate itself, right? And then after you kill it, then that whole desire kind of like
goes away, because there's the fantasy. It's like you dream of going somewhere, and you've been dreaming and dreaming of, let's say, getting your degree or whatever it is. Once you get there, you're like, okay, I've done it. It's done. Now what? Next. And then it's no longer appealing anymore. So you think, oh, maybe, gosh, this wasn't it.
Yeah.
So you detransition, or you just, you fall out of the face of the earth, and maybe you start taking testosterone again, because now you have no hormones because you've cut your testicles out, and you need some sort of hormone, and estrogen is really not giving you the rise anymore. So now you're back on testosterone, so the AGP starts coming back. And we've read this. We're not making this stuff up. But these are people that are actually talking about this happening in their lives, people that are, being vulnerable enough to share their truth. And so it's a vicious cycle. It's like a game of tennis.
They're being honest, and I appreciate them opening up and being honest about it, and exposing themselves in a way that is makes them very vulnerable.
But helpful for others, so you don't go through the same path. If you start on hormones, you've opened Pandora's box. And it really doesn't solve anything, because just because, we have cross-sex hormones in the blood, that doesn't make us the gender that we think we are.
The thing is, we think, I remember, like, when I first started taking estrogen back in 2013, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm changing. And week to week, you're like looking forward to the expectancy of more feminization and stuff. And it's like, it's all in your head. I remember, that couple that was a trans woman, trans guy, young teens, that they were like kind of like the media darlings and stuff like that. Well, they ended up breaking up later. But I remember, the trans woman girl saying, the changes really aren't that dramatic. They're kind of more subjective. And it's like, it's how you feel. It's how you feel more feminine and stuff. And trust me, okay, it does happen. That I can attest to that. But what doesn't happen is this extreme feminization that I think that when trans women, a lot of them look in the mirror, they're seeing someone like as if, like an anorexic sees themselves in the mirror. Mm-hmm. They see themselves as fat, and they're really, really thin. Well, a trans woman specifically thinks, oh my gosh, my hips are growing. Oh, I love this. Oh, I'm getting bigger in my breast there. It's like, okay, well, what's happening is the testosterone is aromatizing into estrogen, and basically you're getting fatter. Yeah. And estrogen is not a friend to us as trans women. It's
a friend to even genetic females. You've got some of these younger girls that have too much estrogen, and they're going through battles with personality disorders and all sorts of chemical imbalances. Estradiol is not our friend. It leads to cancer, leads to all sorts of diseases. I've never understood why.
If you have a gut, that's estrogen.
Yeah.
Men included.
Yeah, men that have huge breasts, they need to wear a bra because they have bigger boobs than their own wives. That is not healthy for you. We're creating a very unhealthy environment, which then travels to the brain, into your emotional, and then all this bad. It's not pretty.
We see Jazz Jennings. Jazz has been the pinup poster child of trans children and stuff for years, right? So Jazz has their show, and they're transitioning in front of the world, in front of everybody and stuff. And I can see changes in Jazz where Jazz is not the little child that Jazz was. Jazz doesn't have that cute little figure that Jazz had, And now because of estrogen, is blaming a lot of their emotional problems on estrogen, is blaming their weight gain on estrogen.
Doesn't want to socialize.
Doesn't want to socialize.
Do you remember, we talked about this when we were walking the other day, that when Jared was playing soccer, still no hormones, and just Jared expressing themselves.
Jared being Chaz.
Yeah, and was happy and just, had friends and whatever else. As soon as Jeff started taking hormones and blockers, we saw a major shift. You would have thought it would have been a happier person, but it became a very dark, depressed teen.
Yeah.
And it was like, why is that? Because estrogen is not the happy hormone.
I mean,
it's not.
Bodybuilders don't, really use it.
No, I mean, no one uses it for anything. If you notice, testosterone is a class 2 type. If they catch you with that, if you're not prescribed, you go to jail. Why? Because it makes you bigger, stronger, healthier. It builds your immune system. Estradiol does the complete opposite. It's not, and especially synthetic. If you're genetically born female and your ovaries produce it, you're fine. But when you start overproducing it, you're not fine. Right. So even in genetic females, excess estradiol is a bad thing. Anyway, let's continue with the core pain too.
Well, because our negative core belief is unconscious, the personality would rather feel a distracting pain that is less intense. In order to feel and avoid the intense pain of I am imperfect, this personality feels resentment. So the false core does not have to be experienced, known, and felt.
There are many of these false beliefs that we place in our deeper psyche and create adaptive, or should we say maladaptive scenarios to help us navigate the murky waters in life. And here are a few. We're going to go, I am worthless.
I'm not enough.
I am inadequate.
I am non-existent.
I am alone.
I am powerless.
And I've heard that powerless thing from trans women after the transition, actually. They miss certain things and they miss the power that they have, and it's a battle. So how do you heal core pain? I mean, one size doesn't fit all, and everyone has a different set point for healing. Although I don't really believe a lot in the psychiatric system, I don't believe in taking any types of medication to actually, numb things, because that's all antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and all these other stuff do, is they numb you. Or whether you take drugs, smoke weed, or drink alcohol to oblivious to try and numb yourself, that never solves anything. That just kind of at first gives you a little numbness and alleviation, but then the problems keep happening. And I've noticed, like, when you drink and you drink a lot, I remember back in the day when I drank a lot, I woke up even more depressed because it messes with your nervous system. So anyway, how do you heal core pain? If we think of ourselves as souls coming to the denser experience of our human bodies to grow, purify, and learn, we can imagine what a shock it would be to come from an unlimited loving realm to a place where most people have forgotten who they are.
We live in a world that seems separate from love. It is rare to meet a completely authentic person. Most people are lying and are wearing compensating masks, pretending that they do not feel lacking in love. We live in a world of crystallized egos, the hardening and rigidifying of self that happens when we spend our lives defending away from and compensating for false fears that we are lacking, unwhole, inadequate, loveless, powerless, incomplete, alone, non-existent, worthless, imperfect, and not enough.
And those are typical things that we all face, and I believe that's one of the reasons we create this false self, to think, well, I'm going to be pretty and everyone's going to like me, and I get to wear all these beautiful dresses, or vice versa. If you're an FTM, I'm going to build muscle and I'm going to get people's respect, and no one's going to call me a lesbian anymore. And it's just like we create this scenario that makes us feel normal and loved. And it's false, because if people don't love you for who you are unconditionally, then it's really not true love. If you don't even love yourself for who you truly are. I was born in a woman's body. This woman's body didn't really like all the womeny thing, although I learned to like, hey, I can
Adapt.
adapt, this is what, let me try to like, deal with the
Right.
environment. But I preferred more masculine things. I preferred men's clothes. I mean, I was cross-dressing from a very young age, wearing, and it's more suitable for a woman to wear men's clothing, more acceptable than it is. So, in that case, I was like, save grace,
Guys think that that's hot.
Yeah, they like that, but, to think that you're going to be loved and you're going to be better if you cut off your genitalia or take dangerous hormones or alter your gender on a license or all these crazy things that we feel life is going to be so much better after I do that, it's false. We have been listening to detransitioning videos of individuals who had their top surgery and they were happy for the first 3 years, and all of a sudden, boom, it hit them. What did I do to myself? Why did I have to do that? To make myself feel loved and comfortable? Ultimately, everything we do in life, we do to receive love. Yeah. It's like that is what the human body does.
I mean, the female body gets pleasure from being able to have breasts. So for in your case, what about how that felt when you cut out in a double mastectomy the 2 breasts that you had? How did you feel?
I think I numbed myself, and I became very good at numbing myself because of being sexually molested, which is a whole other bag of beans. And a lot of us in this community that we either have been sexually molested, we have been battered mentally, physically, and all sorts of different traumas that we have to disassociate from who we are. So with me, my breasts were because of being sexually molested. It wasn't that I hated them because they were there and I thought I was a male. I hated them because how men grew up them, and it was like such a dirty thing. Mm-hmm. And because FTMs don't really have the AGP, we don't go, so, it's like, ew, don't touch me. Get away from my area. And I think that a lot of FTM, and if you really search deep into yourself and really see why you hated your breasts, number one, they were maybe too big and uncomfortable and made you sweat. You couldn't do the sports. Somebody touched them the wrong way, inappropriately, made you feel dirty and whatever else. I believe that a lot of that dysphoria against these things right here didn't come from being born in the wrong body, but it came from what was done to us at a younger age.
But now it's like, okay, so now you've lost sensation.
Yeah.
On a body part that was supposed to bring you pleasure. Mm-hmm. And what happens with a MTF when they do and go through SRS is they've lost sensation of something that was supposed to bring them lots of pleasure. And there's so many people that, they're going to tell you, oh, I finally orgasmed for the first time in a year. This is awesome.
Impossible, because it's just women are the ones that have the clitoral nerve. In the male is the penis and the top of the head, but there's just the way after we get made, the way that develops is totally different in male and female. It comes from the same type of material, and everything else is just impossible when they do what they do.
I mean, there are I heard 8,000-9,000 nerve endings on the end of the tip of the clitoris. Yeah. Whereas half on the penis.
Yeah. So, even less than that, I think.
Or even less.
Yeah.
But the fact is that, after all that's done, you're still not going to sexually experience what women have naturally.
Exactly.
So.
Well, it's like trying to buy a Gucci bag, but instead of getting the Gucci bag, you're getting the fake one.
Trying to knock off.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the same thing, and it's, not trying to be mean or anything of that nature, but why try to be something you're not? Why not just be you, a person that's different? And gosh, I don't have any regrets, but if I had this information back then, instead of being railroaded into this trans narrative, like 0 to 60, I would have thought this out a little differently. If I would have known that at the end of the cycle, I was like, what did I do? I went around in a circle chasing my tail, and I thought I caught it, but I'm back where I'm at, Anyway.
I think there's a lot of, there's people out there that are doing things to railroad this even further, and it's affecting children.
Yeah.
So there's this person, she's, the president of transgender, trans care, or whatever they are in Oregon, Jen Burleton, who is on the warpath to change, the conversation, even in a survey that they're trying to get out there so that people can be well informed. Jen Burleton has stated on her Facebook page that she's willing to skew the results by putting false information onto a survey. And that is wrong.
They'll do anything it takes to push this agenda.
That is wrong.
To steer it in a certain direction that the only narrative is the narrative that they want people to know. And, you know, just as many who want to transition, want to do it, are having fun. You know, everybody's entitled to do with their body what they please, but please don't pull out the violin of life and try to make it out. Like before all this was here, people lived. We were gender variant 100 years ago, 200 years ago, thousands of years ago. No one died. People lived. You know, if anything, we've gone backwards to the age of the whole religious dominating everything.
Yeah.
You know, because back in native time, you know, people were too
expressed and lived.
Yeah. No one told, no, you have to fit in this box. It's the religious, it's the society norms that have actually created this. So let's not try to make people feel sorry for us because we're born different. We're born different, and that's great. There's nothing wrong. I was born female body. You were born male body. You know, it's okay for me to express a certain way. It's okay. Why do we have to fit in a box?
We're just variant.
Yeah.
You know, we're just like a part of a spectrum of humanity that doesn't fit inside the male or the female box. In our gender expression, of course, our sex reality is what it is.
Exactly.
But our gendered expression can be as fluid as we want it to be.
Without harming ourselves, without having to deal with all this, like, battle within yourself, because people battle. You know, don't think for one moment, those of you who haven't transitioned, that after you transition, that's it, you're home free. You're still going to battle, and you're going to battle even worse. Yeah. So you have to look at your core pain, which is what we're dealing with here. We're trying to,
the birth of our core pain, biologically speaking, our first experience of realizing that we're separate from love is a shock to the nervous system. The shock of this separation happens in our earliest pre-verbal instinctual brain. The core pain that we hide from for most of our lives covers up the shock and trauma from our original separation from unconditional love.
This separation from love, inevitably, it happens with our mother at around age 5 to 12 months, or in some cases in utero. The core wounded explanation is only an idea that comes later. At a later verbal age, the newer level of our brain makes up a real seeming story to explain why we are insufficient and unworthy of love.
Our core pain organizes our ego identification. Our core wound filters our reality so we do not become emotionally overwhelmed as we did as babies. Re-experiencing the pain of our original separation from unconditional love seems unbearable to our biology. Our ego structure seems to control the chaos of our life, but it also limits the spontaneous surrender to love, creativity, and sexuality.
Because our biological nervous system so vehemently resists chaos, many of us do not ever feel safe enough to encompass the spiritual essence of who we really are. Overcoming our resistance to chaos often requires that we hit rock bottom.
I did that too.
Find out we can come through challenge and be connected to love.
And I did that too. For many people, a crisis of health, love, loss, or desperate circumstances needs to occur before the open-hearted vulnerability of love and compassion can feel real and important enough to become stabilized in one's awareness.
You know, I think that's the number one issue with a lot of individuals in the LGBT, that search for love, you know, and you can't heal until you have some sort of awareness.
Yeah.
You know, and that awareness comes from the dark night soul, you know, falling off the mountain, you know, different things that happen to us in different stages of life.
Oh, you fell off a mountain too?
No, you did. I didn't fall off the mountain. I actually had be the nurturer of that. And, you know, I mean, I've had many traumatic events in my life that have, you know, actually led me to realize a lot of things. And by all means, I'm not healed. I'm still growing. And as long as you're alive, you're going to grow and evolve every day. And we're going to learn, and we're going to go back and forth. And, you know, because to be human is to err, and to learn is to change and grow with these changes. You know, our ego And all of its defenses arise out of our nervous system. Our ego self has a great desire to survive, as is that false self, as it is the foundation of our entire biological organizing system. Our biological rooted survival system aims to prove our fear true in order to remain feeling stable.
I desire and want to prove there is something wrong with me. I desire or want to prove that I am worthless. I desire and want to prove I cannot do. I desire and want to prove I am inadequate. I desire and want to prove I do not exist. I desire and want to prove I am alone. I desire and want to prove I am incomplete. I desire and want to prove I am powerless. I desire and want to prove that I am loveless. I desire and want to prove I am not safe. I desire and want to prove I am crazy. I desire and want to prove I am out of control, etc.
Etc. This reinforcing and self-fulfilling capacity of our core pain always wins over the compensating personality's effort to be positive. Forever working like a machine, our hidden core fear sets up our biological defense system of ego separation.
Why does it take so long to heal?
And that's a good question, because a lot of people are like, damn, I've been living
Some never
on.
do.
I know, because some are never capable of really doing that and finding out why do I hurt? What happened?
Because they're doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
Trying to open up their mind.
Yeah,
And the answers don't lie in our mind. They lie in our heart.
Yeah, and we have to find out, what happened. A lot of stuff is you have to go back and you have to meditate and really be able to deal with the things that hurt. Because we don't want to deal with the things that hurt, so we just hide it. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, you brush it under the rug.
brush it on the rug. And you can't heal if you don't have any awareness. And awareness is painful. It's so painful, but it's easier to believe that if, I take testosterone and I grow a beard and I become this man to protect the hurt little girl, the hurt woman, the hurt individual that was told by society that there's something wrong with me, then this scenario that I create is going to make me strong. But in the end, it's not, because that little nagging voice will continue. And until you really open up and be truthful with yourself, with your loved ones, until you forgive yourself and forgive the loved ones in your past that created that hurt, that scenario, then healing will never come. And I, for one, know that, my gosh, to live life numb, lying to yourself and to others is no life at all. And although people think, well, my transition is what's made me happier and blah, blah, blah. If you really were true to yourself, then you will be true to yourself as you are. Being true to yourself doesn't mean that you have to put on a costume that allows you to walk out in the world and let people see you as something that you want them to see. It's about being true to yourself, being true to yourself, the real self. Doesn't mean you can't be masculine, doesn't mean you can't be a feminine man or a masculine woman, but to take on an identity that really does not belong to you.
I mean, it's like, to literally take your birth certificate and to literally say that what happened didn't happen.
Yeah.
You're like rewriting history.
Exactly.
History can only be written once. And who are we to rewrite it if it didn't happen like that? And people are going to say, well, they categorized me as wrong in the birth certificate because I was assigned male at birth, but I was really a female. And it's like, well,
that's their defense mechanism.
No.
That's their false self. And, it'll take them a while to understand that, because I truly believe that every transgender individual, before they die, as they age, they're going to come to a different reality. And they're going to see things a little different. As we've seen with a lot of the people that secretly, we won't mention names, people that come to us that maybe don't have the balls to do it in front of a public, arena, but they pretty much agree with what we're saying. People that have transitioned for 30 years that realize what's being done in this community, there's kickback to therapists when they give hormones. And this medical community is getting money for what they're doing, and they're getting kickbacks. and they don't care about you or I.
I mean, seriously, there was a longtime transgender woman who had all the things done and everything surgically, and they're part of a trans support group and stuff, and this gender therapist meets with them and stuff in her office, and they're, you know, talking to young kids and stuff like that. Well, she said that they never offer the advice of maybe the children, the teens could be expressing as gender variant. They never give them that option. But she did say that what they do actually do is refer these children from gender therapy. The gender therapist refers them to then a doctor, and the doctor pays the gender therapist for the client now, not that they have a patient. And that is wrong. That is wrong. That should not happen. That is a conflict of interest. Gender therapists are not there to shove people into like some kind of a transition mill,
like a
you know, of expectation for these kids to then pick a box, pick estrogen, pick, you know, testosterone, and live it. You know, that's just wrong.
Society, you know, has still not evolved enough or grown up enough to realize that not everything has to fit neatly in a little box. You know, there are a lot of shades of gray. There's not just male or female. People that are in between, people that may not even identify with breathing either or, you know, and that should be okay too. So let's talk about why does it take so long to heal? I mean, years and years of trauma, sometimes more than one trauma. Sometimes we're dealing with a household that had a lot of problems. So when we are psychologically strong enough in our individuated, separated self, we can turn back the way we came. In other words, it's like going backwards to where you came from, like following your footsteps where you came from, and make our way back to our authentic essence self, where we feel unconditionally loved just as we are. On the journey back, we can train ourselves to not close down around the emotional vulnerability, which is what we see people, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
You are triggering my dysphoria.
Don't say that.
Don't misgender me. Don't do this. Don't. That solves nothing. You're just showing that your coping skills are so little. If you can't cope with real life, how do you think you're going to cope with this massive change of life?
That's true. Not closing down is the presence work that stays open to everything that arises inside, that we can process and release the emotional imprints of our human life.
Our nervous system makes the map of our reality. That's why I always call this a neurological impairment. And its fears, contraction, structure holds the imprint of all of our human experiences in our body.
That's interesting though, because it talks about it being the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets affected a lot by synthetic hormones, right?
And curiously, each psychological and emotional imprint has its own lifespan within our biology. In this way, we cannot rush or force our own emotional and psychological imprint. It has a specific period of time where it seeks to exist and function through us.
It also has a time to release and pass away out of our existence. This is why we can struggle with particular emotional pain for many years on end, and then all of a sudden, it releases. The change is so profound, we might wonder, why did that ever bother me?
Because it's all timely, it's all neurological, like a child learning first to crawl and walk and run, you know, everything's set. And when we get stuck in certain paradigms throughout our life and through our development, you know, we need to slowly go back. Sometimes things pop up out of nowhere that we have to deal with, and it's so painful and it hurts, but then it gets released and we work through it. That's why I highly recommend, you know, meditating. Meditating helps dramatically. We're doing things of that nature.
Yeah.
You know, unconditional loving presence and learning to soften and relax into whatever emotional material is arising in our awareness is the only inner work we need to do.
Our psychological defenses each have their own biological survival and fight or flight instincts built into them. And each emotional fragment has a lifespan that will return back to essence in its own right timing.
Each layer of emotional healing must be processed in its own inherent order and timing when we feel strong enough to stay vulnerably open to our emotional pain. Because, you know, you have to be vulnerable. You have to allow the awareness to kick in. This open-hearted practice, again, heart may involve staying present to imprints of fear, sadness, or anger for brief or extended periods of time before the emotional imprint releases.
Each emotion is like a seed. Each emotional seed has its own lifespan, and one day, with constant loving attention, it will complete its life and pass away for good.
And the tool for that is love. Love, love, love. Love heals. And not just the love from somebody else, because we can't always expect to be loved from someone else. We have to give ourselves that love and be gentle and accept ourselves, not try to like, well, I was told that I was like born wrong and I've got to fix myself. I got to do all these things to fix myself. In the long run, all that fixing that you think you're doing is not helping, because this is not about external fixing.
But I love the example that Erica gave us last week about the cup and how love flows through and in us and stuff. And she talked about how, we always give out of what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when we run out, there's none left. How we need to give out of out of the overflow of the love that we have for ourselves, so that it'll flow into other people.
Perfect example, we won't mention name, there's this trans woman that keeps engaging with you. And it's like they are trying to help you, as they think, by telling you blah, blah, blah. But it's easier for her not to look at self and how much pain they're actually in. Right. So she's actually just trying to
kind of deflect
and trying to help. And that's what a lot of older trans people end up doing. They want to mentor and they want to take along the younger ones and they want to do whatever.
Well, most of them don't. Most of them want to be silent.
Yeah, most of them do. But the ones that feel like, okay, my life is, it's like becoming a nun. There's nothing left. I'm just going to become a nun. And, so it's so much easier to think, well, I'm just going to try to point fingers at everybody else instead of doing the work itself.
Right.
Because it's hard. It's hard work. It's not easy.
Yeah, it is.
Transitioning, that's a piece of cake. And once you're done, you think you're all ready and geared to go. No. So real self-confidence and esteem is based, this is not okay. Overcoming insecurity and low self-esteem is the next actual topic here. So real self-confidence and esteem is based in emotion, not self-image. See, and that is where this right there, my God, real self-confidence and esteem is based in emotion, not self-image. What are the trans community trying to do?
Yeah.
They're trying to fix something with an improper tool, because it doesn't come from your self-image. It doesn't come from, growing your hair or getting a boob job or growing facial hair or putting on muscles or wearing dresses. It comes from emotional.
So the mirror is not your tool.
It's a lie. It's lying to you big time. So for those of you that are listening, I know a couple of you are really, that we spoke to, we're really excited about listening to this topic. How do you calm that false self that makes you crazy thinking all day about transition? Know that anxiety that you're feeling inside, that urge of you need to transition or die, is coming from your inner self crying out for help. Your boredom, your depression, your lack of thriving in life stems from some inner work that you need to do, not about you transitioning, going on hormones. Trust me, you do that, you're going to open up a bigger can of worms. Bigger can of worms.
Oh, yeah.
So to build self-confidence and overcome low self-esteem is to change how we feel emotionally about ourselves. To change our emotion requires changing two different core beliefs about self-image.
The first core belief is obvious. It is the belief that we're not good enough. It may have a more specific association to how we look, how smart we are, money, or lack of confidence sexually. The second core belief to change is the image of success that we feel we should be. Changing this belief is contrary to logic, but is a must if we are to overcome insecurity and raise our self-esteem.
So you change what you believe and you change how you feel emotionally. Okay, because that's the key. You change what you believe, because thoughts.
Right.
Thoughts, can make you or break you, and you change how you feel emotionally. Tell ourselves. I mean, I think affirmations are something very beautiful that people could do on a daily basis. When you get up first thing in the morning, everything is well in my world. I am a beautiful and loving human being just the way that I am.
Isn't that what they did in Saturday Night Live? I am a wonderful person. Do you remember that skit?
No, I don't. But this is not funny.
But that's what he would do. Yeah.
Yeah. But, to me, it's self, how do you call it? What's the word I used earlier? Motivating, or it's like self-affirmations are something that are powerful. I mean, we're constantly telling ourselves, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not this enough. But if you change that, you got to change reality. So I never actually heard that Saturday Night Live. I think of Saturday Night Live and I think of
it was like a blonde-haired guy, and he would look in the mirror. I'm sure people remember it. It was a funny thing, but it was about self-affirmation and stuff like that. It's basically kind of poking fun at it, but it's really important to do.
Yeah, and imagine when you're in the mirror and you're trying to bring that false self to life, that woman you feel you are inside, and you're nurturing that. Why do you think it takes a life of its own? Because you're giving that person that doesn't exist, that's not real, more attention than you probably ever gave your real self. So damn, they're like, oh hell yeah, But if
it's rising.
Yeah. So if you instead of doing that, gave love and attention to your real self, the self that you were born as, whether it's as feminine as that real self wants to be, then I guarantee you will heal. The second belief to dissolve is that we are inadequate and somehow not good enough.
These are the beliefs that create emotions of insecurity and fear. The emotions are not the problem, they are just the resulting symptom of negative core beliefs. The not good enough image, quote unquote, is a construct of our imagination. It is a belief about ourselves created by the mind, concluding that we are, quote, not good enough to meet the image of perfection. A step to changing this belief is to recognize that we, the one observing the self-image.
We cannot be the self-image we are looking at. We are the one doing the looking. This means the self-image we create is really a non-self image. With awareness, we can decide to believe in the non-self image or not believe in the non-self image.
Having this awareness helps shift our point of view and is a beginning step that will help us change a belief. Changing the not good enough image is much easier once you have broken your belief in the image of perfection. Without the image of perfection, you no longer have the comparison, reinforcing the unworthy self-image.
Exactly, creating a false image, which actually, leads to an endless road. And
it's like you said before today. You mentioned it's like a dog constantly chasing its tail.
It never really. It thinks it's going to catch its tail, and it keeps going round and round and round and round, and it's like, I'll look better if I get this one more procedure. I'll get there if I do this one extra thing. I'll be happy if I do this and that. And we live life based on that. It's like tunnel vision. Your life is going.
I mean, there's this one trans woman that we saw on the Facebook page said, getting D's was never so much fun. It's like, so they're at like a place to get breasts and stuff, and it's like they've been on this fast track to transition.
Because as a gay man, they were totally ridiculed. They weren't respected. So because of that, I'm not a gay man. I must be a woman. So therefore, I'm going to create an image, and it gives them satisfaction. And this creation just validates it's a sexuality.
It is a sexuality.
You like get the satisfaction. You don't even care about having sex with anybody else. That's like, okay, just you care about that person telling you how beautiful you are, how great you are. You don't even give any attention to this person that's giving you all that. You just need that. It's like it feeds your false self.
It's like, when people congratulate another trans woman on their selfie.
Oh yeah.
They're like, oh, you look so great. You look beautiful, hon. I mean, it's like, and the truth is, a lot of times, it's not like that, you know, and it's like,
Because you don't want to hurt
you
their
don't want to hurt
feelings.
their feelings, but then you send this false self-pleasing, gratifying message to someone who is going to eat it up,
Yeah.
and their false self is going to just rejoice in it, and they're going to do even more things in their transition.
And at the end, it's not going to look pretty, because the reality is that these people enabling these individuals are not helping. You know, people say, well, everybody deserves to be happy. And yeah, everybody deserves to be happy. But everybody deserves to have real happiness, not some sort of false happiness that's not going to be long-lived. It's short-lived. Because the next time, you know, that problem that has never been really opened up to look inside what's going on and how to fix it, it's going to rise again, and now it's going to have even more problems.
Yeah.
Because it just gets bigger and bigger as we continue to do things. The problem keeps rising and rising, and it gets worse and worse, and we find ourselves in situations that are pretty bad. You know, where a lot of trans women get hurt, beaten up on, and all sorts of stuff, because, you know, it's like one thing led to another, and before you know it, you know, danger.
And people always tell us, you know, why are you guys always so negative about transition? I mean, gosh, it does not work for you. And, you know, I mean, it's like, it's not about that. It's about the fact that people are getting hurt, and they're just really, you know, I mean, they need more than the help that they're getting right now.
This one-size-fits-all Burger King version of fast food to transition is not the solution. I like to see a little bit more research. I like to see the gender specialist or psychologist really get into and deal with people's true problems. And the true problem is not gender dysphoria.
But why is there no long-term study available? I mean,
well, they actually had a long to 325, and the suicide rate increased by 41% of those individuals that were actually after transition. And a lot of people, you know, just weren't happy in the long run. You know, true, what's the word I'm looking for? True reports, they're not happy. They weren't happy. That's why the Hopkins Center closed down, because they're saying, hey, we're not helping people. And now you people don't believe in Dr. McHugh's. And I know, I mean, no one in the trans community actually believes in anybody that doesn't sing their tune. Right. But there's some truth to all these stuff, you know. And if you're really true with yourself, yeah, you may be happy now because it's honeymoon phase. You know, did you really solve anything? Did you really? Do you think that your genitals or your gender is so important? You know, do you think that's all life revolves around? There's more to you than your genitals and your gender. And to think that is going to solve all your problems, is you're telling yourself a lie. You're going to create a lot more problems.
Oh, and I want to address something. There's people out there that are saying things on Facebook and other parts of social media in which they imply that I somehow don't have a brain of my own to decide whether, you know, SRS was or was not good for me or whatever, and they think that you're like brainwashing me to be doing things that I don't want to do. I mean, I have always been an independent person. I have always done things my way. I mean, why would this be anything different?
It is you who creates all the questioning. It is you, and I just like look at you and like, oh, okay, we're on this ride.
Well, what? The reason that I even went this direction was because of an article that came out in which Dr. Bowers stated that there was a myth to male privilege, and then started to describe things about how they enjoy their female privilege, of having the door open for them, of waking up in the morning with mascara in their eyes. You know, it's like, this is autogynephilia. I don't care if you don't believe in it. But when someone states that being a woman is about mascara remnants on your eye, that is not what being a woman is about. And the truth is that a person like me, a person like, I'm sorry, Dr. Bowers and all the Bowers girls and everybody else that is male, born male, whatever, will never know what it's like to be a female. We'll never know. I mean, I know what it's like to be feminine expression of me, but I do not know what it's like to walk down the street at night, during the day, and worry about my safety. Like a woman, born a woman, raised as a girl, as a teen, growing up, I'll
As
never
a
know
property,
that.
as a property,
I'll never
because
know
women
that.
have always been property of men. Women have always gotten paid less. Women have always had to deal with abuse. Women have always had to deal with things that a male body person would never have to deal with. And just because one morning you wake up and you look at, because you just saw a movie of Marilyn Monroe and you thought, oh my God, it would be so great for me to look like that or be that. I'm sorry, it's not the same thing. There's, when you say I feel like a woman, how do you know how I feel? How do you know what I had to go through as a young girl growing up as a young woman, and then to womanhood? How I feel or how any other woman on this planet feels, you can't. That's impossible. That's
And
totally
I really
impossible.
don't understand how, someone can call themselves, a woman not having biologically being born.
Yeah, we're
But
socialized.
yet, yet the claim is that trans women are women. And it's simply not true. Trans women are a woman type, maybe. Maybe that is maybe appropriate, but they are not a type of woman. There's a difference. There's a woman type, like a copy of one or an attempt to make one look like one, but we are not a specific type of
How
woman.
about no gender? How about that? We're just who we are.
We are a gender variant human
Yeah.
being that doesn't really prescribe to either one of the gender sex roles that have been assigned to us by a society that believes in a two-gender system.
Yeah, and why submit kids to all sorts of blockers and hurt them and screw them up as individuals and not let them go through their normal puberty, block it and do all sorts of stuff that's just going to mess with the nervous system. We have, I don't know how much, it's already been an hour and a half, and there's a couple more articles. I don't know if we could just wrap it up.
Yeah,
here.
we've been on for a while.
Yeah,
so.
and just continue the rest of the stuff next week, along with the cross streamer and the femphemia and all that stuff that we're going to talk about.
Right.
But pretty much, the topic was that, finding out about your false self, how you could help with that. There's no quick fix to any of this stuff, and there's no black or white. No one really understands gender that great. They might tell you they can. Even the ones that created all this madness in the beginning, the Harry Benjamin, they still didn't know what they were doing. We're going to have another show on that as well. I mean, we really want to create
awareness,
and we'll talk about it, not sugarcoat it, not tell you what you want to hear. There's a lot of people go online and they're searching because they've all of a sudden had this awakening that they feel they're a woman, they want to transition, and they're just trying to find justification for doing what they think they need to do.
Just something to latch onto, something to give that false self. What is it? Vindication, the ability for it to find itself a reason. I talk to guys that are contemplating transitioning and stuff, and they come to our YouTube and they come to our Facebook and stuff, and they're asking good questions and everything, but I find that they're trying to latch on to whatever they can to feed that impulse. And believe me, I know, I've been there, I've done it, and I've lived it. But I'm just going to tell you that it's a Pandora's box, and it opens up to more tragedy, to more depression, to more sadness, to more unanswered questions, to more feelings of isolation, to more pain. And I am lucky because I found this person, but many people in the transgender community do not find anyone, and they end up very alone and very disheartened and very sad and lonely. And I'm not trying to paint this poor, pitiful picture of the transgender community. I'm just saying that for the majority of transgender individuals, it doesn't end well.
And even those that transition successfully, as many of you want to call it, the transition successfully paradigm doesn't always come out with that image because the emotions are still not transitioned. They're still not healed. Physically you may look like that gender that you wanted to transition to, but emotionally, you're not there. You will never get there because you weren't born in that sex. You were born the opposite sex. And as much as you want to be that sex, you weren't equipped with that ability. You could try to learn, you could try to mimic, you could try to watch women, how to walk, how to talk. You could get all the surgeries, all the voice surgery, but every cell in your body has a different programming from what your heart, your fantasies, and your needs are. And I wanted, like, this thing I wrote here, this is mine, gender dysphoria. There's no fear of your gender or afraid or whatever. It's just a byproduct of not fitting in to your environment and creating your own solution to justify your behavior. That's pretty much, there's really no objective testing. I mean, there's not one objective testing,
No.
To determine who has this so-called condition. When you go to a doctor,
Right.
they can't. There's no objective finding. They can say yes. You can test your chromosome and see if you're intersex. In intersex, you can see if you're got one testicle at drop and the other one's hidden and whatever. I mean, intersex has a black or white.
Right.
Transgender people, gender dysphoria, no, it's all subjective. There is not one theory, not one, that actually will tell you that, hey, you're it. They'll tell you you're it. They'll tell you what you want to hear, but no. What there is are behavioral adaptations that we engage in and are now trying to justify them with this feel sorry for me approach and labeling it as a biological condition to recruit sympathy from the world. And that's pretty much, my take on it.
I mean, I think that there is a biological basis for certain things, but there's also a psychological basis for things. There's also childhood trauma experiences and ACEs, as they call them. All these things combined, and sexuality of our human psyche. Sexuality drives a lot of what we do, our sexual nature. And there's more to understand about our sexual nature, because that may be the seat of our own, our own humanity is like in this powerful sexual drive that we are all born with. Once you cut the sexual drive out of a man, then he becomes docile, he becomes compliant, his will to conquer, to challenge, to create, it dies.
And I think that's what happens with our world. That's why so many men are trying to take the role of think they're women, because gosh, what fun thing is there for a man to do that they did back in conquering and hunting and playing that role of a guy? Nowadays, with all the estrogenic compounds and endocrine disrupting chemicals that we have, and we saw a documentary the other day about that, most men aren't even virile. They can't even get their wives pregnant. They can't even have an erection. They're like so docile, like you said.
Viagra, Cialis is sounding like hotcakes.
That carries the pan in the household nowadays, because it's like women are becoming more masculinized and men are becoming more feminized. So everything is going flip-floppy. So no wonder everybody wants to change their gender, because it's like, well, I don't fit in this paradigm. Let me go to the other. And it's
just there's just people that are disillusioned, bored, they feel unfulfilled, they're sad, they're lonely, and they figure that, damn it, I made a horrible guy. Maybe I can make myself into a wonderful woman.
And when they go into that venture, I like to say a large majority of them, and they just don't cut it.
This is a person who would be the pinup, beautiful trans woman of the century, Marion.
Marion, my friend. Yes, who was a
beautiful
male
person.
Model for the highest of all. You name it, all the brand name, he modeled for it. She did everything, SRS, the whole 9 yards.
Came out looking
gorgeous. I at the time I was married to Violet, and if it wasn't that, I was like, whoa. Fell in love with someone, realized that this person did not want her, even as beautiful as they were, even as whatever. The guy played with her, toyed with her, broke her heart. She decided to detransition. She was like, I lost my soul. I can't even. As a guy, she would have been able to get anybody. She had a beautiful relationship with someone she broke up with to follow the so-called dream. Now, on antidepressants, let her vagina close up because she stopped dilating. She stopped taking hormone. And she told me, because we were good friends, Marquito, she calls me, I've lost my soul. I just want my soul back. She was crying, unable to sleep, unable to eat. She has lost so much weight, she's literally wanting to die.
And we don't know what's happened to her since.
She won't write back. I've been trying to find out what the heck, you know. And I only wish that she would come on the show, but, you know, she has so much pain. She can't, she's not ready to come out to the world and tell people, please don't do this.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of post-SRS trans
Yeah,
women.
they kind of
like they can't, you know, I mean, coping, the inability to cope with the reality is what made them do what they did already.
Mm-hmm.
So now, after the end of the rainbow, and everything's happened, and everything has been done that's going to ever be done,
Yeah.
you can't get any higher than where you're at, you know, and they still find themselves broken, alone, sorry, and regretful. After all this stuff, they can't handle the emotional trauma that it would cause them to admit. And already, okay, we all know that men do not like to say that they're wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you can say whatever you want, but you know, if you were born male, you have that, you know, thing.
And I didn't say yeah because I think I'm a man. It's because, you know, since I've been involved in the LGBT community and been involved with trans women, I've learned a lot about men that I never knew before. Because having been with women all my life from the time I was 13, I identified back then as a lesbian in fear of men because, you know, my father, alcoholic, getting sexually molested. So I've learned so much from trans women of like the mechanics of men and how they react and how they're unable to take responsibility. They're unable to, you know, it's just all this dynamic that I'm like going, wow.
It's like, okay, 38 years of living as a woman.
Yeah.
15 almost years of living as a trans guy. It's like this person kind of has an idea of what is going on a little bit. And I'm not saying that because I'm some brainwashed little dweeb or something. I'm just saying that because I am noticing that the wisdom that this person has of being able to live in a cross-gender experience for an extended period of time grants them the ability to say the things that they do say. And the fact that they were a medical professional also gives them the input to be able to offer and give the advice and things that they know as a professional. You know, I mean, it's like there's lots of wisdom here. And, you know, we're not talking about a person who just transitioned last year. We're talking about a person who did it. And, you know, I mean, I watched just something about Adrian Dowling, you know, that famous Men's Health person, trans man who's going to be like on the cover and stuff. And they said, back in the day, I watched a Maury Povich show, and there was this person on who was actually born female and now is a male. And it's like, wait a minute, was that you? I mean, were you the one who gave Adrian Dowling that? I mean, it's like, so this person's been kind of on the ground floor of this whole thing. You know, trans women
Jeanette
have been
contacted
around.
me because of that Mark.
Yeah, I mean, Jeanette Jennings contacted, the mother of Jazz Jennings.
Yeah,
So, I mean, this person is like a bedrock of the transgender community. This person's been around, has been influential in the lives of so many of you who watched his videos on Maury Povich, who watched him on YouTube. Before YouTube even started, this guy had transitioned. So, I mean, that's where we're at. You know, I'm nobody. You know, I'm just a person that transitioned back in 2014. I don't have the you know, the history that this person has. But I would just say, you know, listen, you know, just be able to understand that we're not coming from a place of condescension or you know, trying to make people feel bad or anything. We're talking about a person who's now 52, who has experienced life on both sides of the tracks, and just saying, look, at the end of the day, you are who you are. This is who you will be for the rest of your life. Cut off what you will, do what you want. The reality is that you are who you are, and you'll never change.
And you're not going to get any happier by cutting or adding or dicing or doing whatever it is that we do. It's not going to change the pain that you have inside. You have to do the emotional work, and you have to quiet down that false self, because it doesn't get any better by doing the other. They might tell you it does. There's going to be a lot of people lying, and there'll be a lot of people just, waving that flag. But in the end, when the years go by, you'll see different. Anyway, we've rambled long enough.
Yeah.
We will be putting another great show for you next week. If you are a detransitioner and want to be on the show and share your story, you're more than welcome. If you're a healthcare provider and a gender specialist that are getting the aha moment and realizing that what you guys are doing is not correct, and you want to talk and open up, we need people to come out and really, really be serious about this and stop just spreading the fairy tale scenario and lying to people and lying to themselves. So anyway, guys, we love you, and but remember to always love yourself too. You can't live. What's that one famous one? You can't live your truth, and your truth is not the false self-truth, your real truth.
Yeah.
Then it's not worth living. So, good night, guys.
Good night.